Hey, what's going on? JD here, and this is the Daily JD. Thanks for tuning in, guys. As always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell button, let people know that you are here. Share the fact that you are here as well and that you want others to join in the conversation. So hopefully you are having a fantastic week. I know that I've been fairly busy, been doing some things and having a good time. Creative juices are flowing really, really well. 2019, we're just starting to get things moving. A bit of a slow start for me in a lot of ways, but that's all good at the end of the day. So if you are here, please let me know in the comments. Of course, we go live 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time every Tuesday and Thursday. You can get notifications by hitting that subscribe button, as well as hitting the bell to get notifications. Or you can follow me on Twitter at PaintInc, as well as all my other socials, Instagram PaintInc, TwitchTV.PaintInc. All my stuff is PaintInc except for the channel itself, which is J Durham, ironically enough. Hey, good to see you, Craftsmith. Thanks for dropping in. A nice little video from you today in regards to templating and creating cosplay items out of EVA foam, which is always cool to see, especially, you know, with a big, comic expo that Calgary does have. So, I mean, always a lot of good information there. So by all means, you guys should check that out. And on top of checking that out, of course, you should check out our Patreon supporters here on YouTube as well. We've got our sponsors. So our Patreon supporters, thanks to none other than Reviewy McReviewface. So thanks, Reviewy, for supporting us there over on Patreon. And of course, here on YouTube, we've got our supporters in Josh WRB as well as Mums Universe. Both awesome guys, both game streamers. So you can also check those guys out on Twitch TV as well. Woodrow streams a lot of games, everything from Bomber Crew to Spider-Man. Always entertaining, and he's got a nice little setup as well. Josh also has a super nice setup streaming Fortnite. So by all means, check those guys out when you have a moment. It will be well worth your time. And if you are here already, I see there's a few of you in here, by all means hit that like button down below just to help us get some more people in the stream. So thanks again. Craftsmith says, thanks man, Calgary Expo is kind of my big event of the year, and it should be. I mean, being a cosplayer and from Calgary, I imagine that is your big one, although I imagine you pour a lot more resources going to places, outside other conventions, Edmonton and afar. But, home is always home, and always, you could probably go with the bigger getup because you've got home as a home base versus a hotel room. But always interested to see your stuff. The ironic part is that before I met Craftsmith in person, I actually saw him at the expo this year. This is before we actually officially met. He was just outside the BMO dressed up as Bob Ross Deadpool, which is super cool. And he was just outside kind of painting his picture away, holding a pop, I believe, of Deadpool as Bob Ross as well, which was the pop that the Calgary Expo had that was an exclusive from Funko. It was a blank one. I have the painted one here, like the full production one, but they had one that you could paint yourself, and that was super cool. I'm a big Deadpool fan, so of course I noticed those things. Hey, good to see you, the path less traveled. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, Josh, good to see you. I see Bear the Destroyer and some flamin' jalapenos there. So again, thanks for tuning in, guys. As is tradition, if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to talk about, by all means, throw them in the chat. We will definitely get to those things. I do have some things to talk about, some of the stuff that is relevant to YouTube, as well as just, generally being a creator and some things going on. I'm wearing a Deadpool shirt today as well. I am not, but that's not a surprise to anybody, I am sure. I always rock the Sullen Art Collective gear, so and probably will for sometime. But Deadpool is always cool. I'm always looking for a decent Deadpool hat. I kind of want to get one of the ones that are blanked out, but I haven't been able to find one of those yet. Sometime I will find it. So if you are following the YouTube news, you will realize that there is some new stuff going on YouTube. And the fact is that YouTube has updated their guidelines, largely in response to what has happened in the community in the last little while. For those of you who are big into movies and Netflix and have watched the film Bird Box, essentially with Sandra Bullock, where they walk around blindfolded all the time, which led to the Bird Box Challenge, and people doing everyday mundane tasks, blindfolded, recording it, and then throwing it up on social media channels, ranging everywhere from YouTube to Facebook to Twitter to Instagram. They were kind of everywhere. And of course, you know, some of the bigger YouTube players in the world, you know, names like Logan Paul, you know, sort of got out there and started doing the challenge. And of course, some of these people put their own lives in danger and endangered the lives of others. You know, Logan Paul basically getting in a vehicle and driving blindfolded, as well as attempting to cross the road. There was a individual in Utah that attempted to drive a vehicle blindfolded and ultimately got in a vehicle accident. There have been people that have been hit by vehicles, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, what YouTube has decided to do, because of course this hit mainstream media yesterday, a lot of this stuff, including the fact that YouTube is changing their policy, because, you know, mainstream media likes to, you know, sort of exemplify the issues with YouTube, because YouTube is a definite threat to mainstream cable. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they have changed their guidelines. If you are doing challenges that endanger people, so if you're doing the Tide Pod Challenge or the Fire Challenge or the Bird Box Challenge and driving cars, or if you're doing any of these other, the Condom Challenge, any of these moronic things that the vast majority of the population should realize that is a pretty stupid thing to do, you will be not only demonetized, the video will be taken down completely, and you will receive a channel strike. So they're taking a fairly aggressive approach to it, which I think in a lot of ways are good. They have essentially expanded, you know, the guidelines as well to tackle pranks that may be harmful. Some people may have seen pranks from time to time, you know, channels like Halal, where basically they dress up in Arab gear and they do things like throw bombs into public places that are obviously fake, or they take, you know, a car and hook up a speaker and do a drive-by shooting with no bullets, and obviously cause a lot of fear and, you know, terrorize people, and ultimately post those, and, you know, they get shared over and over and over again, and, you know, generates these people, in theory, a lot of money. So that's going to stop. It's going to end in a channel strike, and, you know, obviously 3 strikes, you're out. So it's good that YouTube is kind of taking a stand on these things. I mean, they keep on tightening the belt. We've seen it over the past few years. They continue to kind of, you know, explain what they expect from users. As I explained earlier on this week, they also released a video explaining their view on monetization and profanity, that, you know, basically talking and, you know, using words like darn, gosh, you know, whatever, you know, very innocuous kind of words, that's not going to get you in trouble if you do drop some 4-letter words, as long as it's not in the first couple words of the video, or if it's not through the entire video, you know, you're not going to get demonetized. But most definitely if you put it in the title, and if you put it in your thumbnail, and you put it in the first few seconds of your video, you are ultimately going to be demonetized. So there you go. I'm gonna go to the comments here. Deadpool rocks. He most definitely does. Josh is working on his gender reveal video. Yay. I won't spoil it for anybody. I do know the gender at this point. That's cool. I look forward to seeing it. But like I said, I already know, you know, sort of the end result. But and again, congratulations to you guys for, you know, the new one on the way. Josh says stupid prank videos should be banned everywhere, and I think that's ultimately what they're going for. I think that YouTube realizes that this is a problem. A lot of people see the stupid prank videos and the challenge videos as a fast track to go viral. I think people sometimes do realize the risks, completely ignore them, and just do it, to kind of get that viral, feed going. Being basically a person that's willing to do something and potentially harm themselves just to get famous fast, which is, totally the wrong approach. If you talk about your 2 minutes of fame, you'll get your 2 minutes of fame, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to stay. If that's all you're going to do is stuff like that, one video is not going to set you up in that regard. So, definitely not a good idea. And I mean, things like the Bird Box challenge as well. I mean, the fact that Netflix has to go out and say, don't do this, it's kind of sad if you really take a look at it on a baseline level, that people are willing to go and do that. And I mean, I've seen all sorts of weird stuff pop up in my feed, and, these challenges going absolutely wrong, and, sadly, because of what Bird Box is, and that Sandra Bullock has kids that she has in tow, people doing it with their kids and endangering their kids, which is kind of twofold. And that goes back to, YouTube's policy as well, that if you are, sort of endangering or humiliating kids, and this, kind of goes back to some of the channels that were demonetized, where they were seen basically torturing their own children for views, and basically what would be considered abuse. There is a zero tolerance on that as well, which will end up in videos being taken down, and again, strikes against the channel. So there you go. Craftwork Filmwork says, what the heck are people thinking? Good on YouTube crackdown. Stupid stuff like that. I absolutely agree. Path less traveled, Gillette razors. We could talk about that in a second. Absolutely. I'm just going to jump through the comments there, but we can definitely talk about that. Good to see you, Nick. I miss the whole Bird Box thing not being on Facebook. I miss a lot of the stupid shit now, thankfully, which is good. I mean, it definitely transcended all social media platforms, but Facebook does amplify a lot of stuff really, really fast. So the question is Gillette razors. For those of you who are watching social media, I guess this week is Gillette razors released an ad. It was more of I will say a social statement versus a advertisement from them, but I will qualify that is that, when companies do things like this, and Gillette, and I'm not going to go terribly deep into it, the ultimate end goal for them is advertising. And what Gillette accomplished in this is ultimately advertising. They got it out there. They've got everybody talking about it. The fact that I'm talking about it now, it's getting the name repeated over and over and over again. And, essentially, that is probably, as far as they are concerned, a marketing success. There has been some negative backlash from it. There are a lot of men that are upset, with sort of the content of the video. There are a lot of people out there that are praising the video. It's kind of split people in a lot of ways. It depends on your interpretation of, sort of the key, topic being toxic masculinity, and how you take that and how you interpret that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to remember that Gillette is essentially a razor company designed to sell you razor blades, and that is their goal. They just want to get their name out there, and this is one of the ways that they do it. And you see this kind of more and more, with companies that are out there, things like Ben & Jerry, when they sort of attacked Trump, they even said, admittedly by their own CEO, that, hey, we're just an ice cream company. We're just an ice cream company, looking to be, sort of a social justice company. So, I mean, there's definitely some ploys in there, and, it's working because it's got people talking about it. It's gone viral. There are a huge amount of videos kicking around on the internet, as well as YouTube, that have a huge amount of views. A lot of people, are doing things, I think, in a lot of cases, to sort of inflame things, or taking a position that they know is extremely controversial in order to boost their own ratings as well. So it's kind of, advertising in themselves. it's an interesting thing. It's just one of those things. I think, it's kind of interesting. If you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan talked about it. He was very kind of explicit in the sense, like, it's like, you're a razor company. Just sell me razors. Like, nobody likes to be told, basically, what they should be doing, especially if they're doing it already. And, he kind of took that position. It's like, you're not, a social justice movement. You are a razor company, so it's kind of an interesting stand on those things. Nick says no such thing as bad advertising. We got a look up from Mom's Universe, and Snowflake Keyboard Social Justice Warrior Woke Scolds are everywhere, and frankly, they all need a can of whoop ass opened on them. And that's fair enough. I mean, it's, again, like, if you want to talk about the Gillette commercial, basically saying don't be a dick is not a bad thing. People shouldn't be dicks. But, I think, a lot of times too is that, it's the banter afterwards that, sort of escalates things and gets things ramped up. And I think, again, Gillette kind of calculated that this might be a means to sort of get people talking, and they effectively did that. And effectively, in saying that, you're very, very much aware of their brand. In fact, so much so that you could probably go out today and say, name 3 razor brands, and the first word that's going to roll off their tongue is Gillette. And, it's kind of funny. I was actually talking to somebody today about this, and we were sort of, briefly discussing. I'm like, can you name 3 razor brands? They said Gillette, and then they were stumped on what other razor brands existed. So, I mean, again, essentially, it is effective marketing because, regardless if you are upset by the video or you are extremely pleased. I know a lot of women that I've talked to are very happy about the video, that, it's, they feel very good about it. And, ultimately at the end of the day, women do a lot of shopping. My wife does the shopping. If she's happy with the video, I'm probably going to end up with Gillette razors, whether I would want them or not. Again, it's a very good marketing tactic, is what it comes down to. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we should all practice being better human beings, better to each other, better to one another, and, that's just the nature. And I think the issue with a lot of men is that the vast majority of men are good people and doing good things and not doing the things that this commercial, has sort of suggested. And, that's kind of, it's kind of, that stereotypical thing, and people don't like to be stereotyped and, lumped in with everybody else. It's, if a couple bad people are doing some bad things, you don't want to be painted with the same brushes. I mean, I think that's where, sort of some of the hostility comes from at the end of the day. Josh says, this is how companies have to think nowadays. With advertising, going viral is better than not going viral. Exactly. Having the product on the lips of people, whether it's negative as, or positive, and as Nick suggested, there is no such thing as bad publicity at the end of the day. I mean, the fact that everybody in the world, knows who Logan Paul is actually an advantage for Logan Paul a lot of times. Some of the best things that you can do is when there is negative things going on, is just, essentially say, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't want part of that. And you don't kind of spread it forward. The more you spread that information, sometimes it has the reverse effect that you have going on. And again, marketing firms are very, very well versed in what to do. And like I said, Gillette, in a sense, from a marketing strategy, executed very, very well in getting, sort of their product out there. And the fact that everybody's talking about this, and it's got people ramped up. And this is, 2 days later, 3 days later? Are we 3 days into this? And we're still ultimately talking about it. So very, very interesting stuff. It's marketing is a very, very interesting game at the end of the day. So there you go. Again, if you have any questions, by all means, throw them in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. And, we can definitely discuss those things. And I should take my YouTube logo off there because we're not talking about YouTube anymore. So there we go. So One thing I want to talk about, I mean, is I know everybody's sort of ramping into my YouTube logo turned back on, is into the new year and getting things moving. Schlange, Rockwell, and Parker, all companies, by the way. I did not know they were razor companies. I went with Schick and Bic were the two razor companies that I talked about. And I think the other one is... I can't even remember the name. It's got a little triangle on the package. It's actually what I use. I use them because they're so cheap. I buy tattoo razors because I still have an account with Tattoo Company. And tattoo razors are super, super cheap. They're one use. They're super sharp. And they glide really, really well. And they just get chucked away. So that's what I do for razors. There you go. Do you believe that you can create your own once-in-a-lifetime opportunities? I do believe you can create your own opportunities. You know, it's, you can always, I think a lot of times it's, you know, it may take you a lifetime to create those once in a lifetime opportunities, but you can always build towards something. You know, I think that everybody, you know, whether you have, you know, immense talent or if you're a journeyman, meaning that you have to work really, really hard, can create those opportunities through hard work over time. You know, you can essentially go out there and you can hustle and you can get in front of people because, you know, it's, I always say this about, you know, sort of music and musicians especially is that, you know, I find that, you know, some of the most talented musicians are largely unheard just because, you know, they don't go out. They're more about, you know, just sort of playing for themselves and doing their thing. And, you know, they don't really push their stuff. Where a lot of journeymen that aren't necessarily that great, you know, go out and they push and they push and they push and they push, and you get in front of more and more people. I mean, that's really what it is, you know, sort of getting an audience. So do I think you can create your once in a lifetime opportunities? I think if you can position yourself to get in front of the right people at the right time, you can absolutely create your opportunities, you know, and, you know, get out there. A lot of the stuff I would say that I've done is just through tenacity. It's not through talent. You know, it's getting out there and just doing and figuring things out, getting in front of the right people, and, you know, ultimately, you know, getting things done and just proving that it can be done. You know, so I think that can definitely happen. Absolutely. Dollar Shave Club. No, I've never used Dollar Shave Club, but very, very popular brand as well. Been there, done that several times. Awesome. So collaboration and brainstorming. So yesterday I was lucky enough, I went out at the end of the day. I basically met up with Josh, WRB. I met up with Michael as well, who I didn't know very, very well. We had a great brainstorming session and, you know, talked about everything from channels and plans to, you know, everything in between, you know, how to, you know, sort of move things forward and a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, I will say this to everybody is that if you can sit down with people, whether it's, you know, once a month, once every couple weeks, you know, once every 3 months, and just sort of sit down, people that have, you know, common interests, that, you know, you're in the same sort of field, or you are, you know, creatives, but have different interests and sort of different viewpoints of things. It's always really, really good. I had never sat down with Michael before, and he brought some very, very interesting perspectives that I had not thought of before. And it gets my creative juices going, and it creates a dialogue among people, and you sort of go on this journey together and, you know, sort of figure things out. You know, it's people that are driven and, you know, as Josh is indicating there, like-minded, you know, sitting down and, you know, sort of generating ideas. It helps everybody as a whole. You know, we talked about things, you know, like competition versus collaboration. And, you know, a lot of times we're all occupying the same space. I would argue that we're, you know, you're going to get further through collaboration versus competition, in the sense that, you can build off one another's ideas, and, basically when people are doing things, and, Josh, I'll use Josh as an example here. Josh ran a competition utilizing a platform called Gleam.io that has worked really, really well for him. And in a sense, Josh is kind of like a petri dish in that sense. Like, he's gained the experience. He went out, he took the chance, he's benefited from it, but everybody can learn from that experience. And as long as you're open and sharing and, do these kind of things, everybody can build, because everybody has strengths. Everybody has weaknesses. There's things that, some people know very, very well, and there's other parts of them that don't know anything at all. Like, I had never heard of Gleam until basically Josh had indicated, but it sent me in a direction that I could go and I could research and see what it's all about and see if that's right for me. It doesn't mean, just because it works for somebody that's going to work for you, but definitely having that information and having those options and knowing what's available to you is definite. And, through having conversations with Josh and Michael yesterday, it's kind of a wide bunch of avenues. And it's interesting as well, because a lot of times when you're having these conversations with people, you're all kind of working on the same things, trying to move in the same directions. And a lot of times there's opportunities to collaborate, to help each other to grow together, as well as, fast tracking your stuff, because, they've really been doing the same thing or working on something that's very similar, and where you can draw from their experience. So, I mean, it's always good to kind of sit down. And I think, the intention, I think, yesterday was we kind of sit down for an hour, chit chat, and then, go do some other things. But ultimately, by the time we were done, I think we were about 4 or 5 hours in, and, we had explored a ton and ton of stuff. So, I mean, absolutely fantastic. It was really good. And there we go. Nick says, if you want to sing, sing. If you want to play sport, play for the sport. If you want to get famous on YouTube, play Fortnite, Mr. Beast. Or pay Fortnite. There you go. So that's good. As is tradition, Jerry consults Jesus for everything. That's your new line, man. I'm not sure. It must be the weed. So there you go. But yeah, what I'm saying is, if you can find people that you work well with and collaborate well with, it's always good to kind of sit down from time to time and, sort of talk about things, talk about what they're doing, how they're going about that. There is huge opportunities to learn, exactly, sort of how they go about things. Jerry Bullshit Corner, I have learned a ton of stuff from Jerry as well. Jerry has a couple great channels, a lot of DIY stuff, as well as, some of the ups and downs that he has had, because he's been in the YouTube game for a long, long time. It's always very interesting to hear what Jerry has to say, because he has experienced, YouTube from way back up until now. He's gone through some ups and downs, with monetization and all sorts of stuff, as well as sort of influx of people into his channels. But like I said, he's got 2 very successful channels. I do suggest you check them out, and he's got a good following, and especially if you are into Jeeps and basically rebuilding your Jeep or putting a new motor in your Jeep, it's definitely the channel to go. Jerry says, seen you online, so I stopped to check it out. I appreciate that. Thanks for dropping in. Nick consults Spider-Man. They dropped the new trailer for that. And if you guys watch, are big into movie trailers, the new Spider-Man's coming out with Mysterio and such. And I was just kind of, I don't know, it's not doing it for me. I don't know if it's just there's been too many Spider-Man movies and too many Spider-Man and too many renditions of it, and I'm just fed up with Spider-Man, who I do very much like as a comic character. But, it's just, and I still haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, which I hear is phenomenal, which I do really have to watch. But, ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not too jazzed about that. Looks so, man, we need to grab some beers sometime soon. We haven't chatted a long time. We definitely have to do that. I know you've been super busy because you've been doing that LS swap, which I can't even imagine. I saw the, sort of all the wires that you had out from the wiring harnesses and stuff like that. And I can't get my head around it. That's just way, way too much, techie stuff for me, and electrical stuff is most definitely somewhere where I would significantly fail, or mess stuff up. You'd probably turn on the indicators and, you know, start the car. That's how bad I am. But yeah, we should definitely have some beers, go to Dan's favorite spot, Minhouse or something like that, and definitely, you know, have some beer and some Lighthouse pizza, and that would be awesome. What else do we have here? Josh loves how Mysterio looks. Mysterio looks cool. That's about it. You know, like I said, I'm just not digging the Spider-Man movies right now. I don't know what it is. I wasn't just being a smart ass. I was serious and didn't even think about the new movie. There you go. Hey, there we go. We've got a new member. I always consider, you're always here for me, Woodrow, but thanks, Mums Universe, for the sponsors. I'm not even sure if stuff pops up anymore in this feed, but it does pop up in the chat there. So thank you very much there, Woodrow, for supporting the channel. Path Less Traveled, I don't think that Marvel can continue their train moving forward. That's an interesting thing to talk about in a sense. You know, they're definitely going into the more obscure things. I mean, we have Captain Marvel coming out in the summer, which doesn't really super appeal to me either. And, you know, I'm definitely a comic book guy, and I can honestly say I did not read Captain Marvel comic books, and I just know the name, and that's just kind of it. I just haven't really dropped in there. Where a lot of the Avengers stuff, the Age of Ultron, all those kind of things, I've had those books for years and years and knew the story. You know, a little disappointed with Age of Ultron. The books were immensely better than that movie, but, you know, they're just trying to, you know, sort of get things along. I think, you know, the thing with the Marvel universe is they have a bunch of star-studded people. You know, the movies have been huge blockbusters. It's been doing very, very well, but there will be at some point an end to it. You know, you will have seen what they've done with Netflix. Netflix, they have canceled a good deal of, you know, sort of the Luke Cages, the Jessica Jones, the Iron Fist. I mean, Disney is obviously positioning themselves to bring guys like Daredevil back to the big screen, so you can expect that in the future. I don't know how well that will go out, because me personally, I did like all the Netflix series. And Netflix is now as well, and I haven't watched it yet, and I'm kind of scared to, is the Teen Titans from DC are now a Netflix series as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do a good job with that, because, you know, the Teen Titans is something that I never liked as a comic book. There's some things that DC does that I really don't like, even though I love, you know, one of my favorite characters is, of course, you know, Batman. But, you know, DC, I just wish they would kind of get it together. Although I will say this, I did see Aquaman. Aquaman has always been kind of one of those joke characters to me. I have never, ever liked him as a character, but I enjoyed that movie. So, you know, DC did a really good job of that. You know, and I hate to say it, but, you know, one of the better DC movies is Aquaman. That's almost tough to say. It's almost tough to say it coming out. So there you go. Path Less Travel says, I think they've saturated the market so thin. I think they're definitely doing that. I think that's why you know, and hopefully I'm not ruining it for anyone. If you haven't watched the latest Avengers movie, close your ears. That's why well, I could just say it. They kill off a bunch of people. They kill off a bunch of people, and that's probably why. And they may or may not come back, but it's comic book universe, so they'll bring them back whenever they feel like it. That's just kind of how that works. Spider-Verse is so good. You know, Spider-Verse was amazing. I have heard such good things about it. Again, I just haven't seen it yet. Again, I have some of the comics associated with it from a long time ago, so, you know, I am familiar with it, so I will definitely have to check that out. Welcome to the crew, man. There we go. I forgot to change my new card. I lost the old one. There we go. Nick, Marvel is all about superheroes trying to be human, and DC is all about humans trying to be superheroes. Or aliens trying to be superheroes, if you're talking about Superman. Ant-Man sequel played into the latest Avengers ending. Oh my God, freaky. It's going to be interesting to see if the MCU can keep going. Disney is slowly killing Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting, you know, sort of, you know, movies, you'll get attached to certain things. And myself, like if we talk about Star Wars for a minute, I love the original three. Because I saw them in the theater, because I was young, because it was like the first time ever going to a theater with Dolby surround sound, and it was a big deal, and it just blew my mind as a kid. It was absolutely amazing. So I mean, you will never get those feelings back. While I like, some of the newer ones, like I did like The Force Awakens, it's always hard to sort of, get those feelings back because, the movie will only do it once. Typically sequels do not outperform, sort of the originals. And the fact that you have a great trilogy there, it's hard to duplicate that at any point. The interesting thing with the comic book movies is that, there is so much material that is written. Some of it very, very good. Some of it absolutely awful. But they have a lot. The reason that they're going to this is they have this wealth of information, the wealth of stories that they can basically, and they're all written. They just have to write scripts that are almost, it's almost written for them already. The plot lines there and so on and so forth. So, I mean, you have decades of these stories and, essentially you can play it out forever. It's just whether or not people will see it, because eventually people will ultimately, get bored of it. They will, stop coming, and, it'll lose some momentum. So, but you'll always have those big superheroes, those big characters, like if you look at things like Batman, when Michael Keaton started way back when, there was so much hype. And I mean, every once in a while they switch, and there's been some terrible Batman movies, but they continue to make them. And, people like myself continue to go see them because you're just fans of the character as a whole. So it will be very, very interesting. There we go. Disney murdered Star Wars. There you go. I hate The Last Jedi, and even for the reasons most people do, female leads are great. Mixed race leads are great. They want to squeeze it for all it's worth. Absolutely. That's the business of making movies, and I think it's getting harder and harder to fill a movie theater day after day, especially with things like Netflix going on. I think you're going to see big changes over the next decade in the movie business, especially with players like Amazon and Netflix. Ultimately, I think you're going to see, kind of a little bit of the demise of the movie theater. Although, movie theaters and movie theater companies are doing a very good job of adapting, everything from throwing Lazy Boys in there to having, 3D a big part of it, sort of creating more of an experience, having, catered food. If you're in the States, I know friends that go there and they will bring drinks to their table side. I mean, if Canada did that, it would be amazing. And do everything like seasons passes, where you can buy a year card for the movies, and you can go to the movies every day for the rest of the year, and you just pay one flat fee, which I think if they did that here, because they don't do it yet, would be amazing. I would probably jump on board with that because I have a movie theater that's like a block from my house. I would just go there all the time and probably not get anything done, but I would be well versed in what's on in the theaters at that point. Although that being said, I am one of these people. I don't watch a ton of TV. I don't consume a lot of media in that sense, just because of, I'm not parked in front of a TV all day long. I'm parked in front of the computer, so I consume a little bit different media. When your Hitler character becomes a plucky comic relief in the opening bit, there's a scene straight out of the movie in Spaceballs. Fair enough, Disney Star Wars is miles better than the prequel trilogy that Lucas shot out. I hate those three films. They don't exist. I'll just say that. I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I don't know what three films you're talking about because they don't exist. Mom's Universe, that's the funny part about Star Wars. There's a lot of material too, comic books, video games, etc. And that's absolutely right as well. If you go into things like, all the action cartoons like Clone Wars, I mean, that universe has expanded and expanded and expanded. It's just one of those things. I don't know how, for me, personally, I will ever get past those three movies. I don't think I ever will, because I don't think you'll ever be able to create something that creates that kind of impact. And that was just a timing thing, because there was nothing like it at that time. It had such a huge impact. But they all seemed hell-bent to ignore the material. The only reason Disney didn't come up with it. Fair enough. I'll agree that Force Awakens, Rogue One, and Solo are better than the prequels. Solo was okay. Rogue One, I liked a little bit, but it was kind of weird because you knew what was going to happen. It's kind of one of those things that what's going to happen at the end of the day. Solo, I think, was done all right. Giving him a little bit of a story, although that wasn't well met and it had its production problems and going through directors and so forth. Force Awakens, I enjoyed that. I do like Kylo Ren, but I do prefer Matt, the radar technician. That is my all-time favorite short. Absolutely 110%. I think it is genius. The undercover boss, Matt, the radar technician, is absolutely brilliant. I think I watch that once, every couple weeks just because it makes me laugh every time. It's just one of those good things. Back to the comments. The Last Jedi was worse than the Attack of the Clones for me. There you go. Craftsman Swimmers. Calgary is getting a VIP theater in a couple years. That'll be interesting. VIP theater will be a different experience. Like I said, the fact that you can get in the States, you can get table service, you can get all sorts of stuff. That kind of appeals to me, although I would be scared at the prices. I mean, for what you pay for popcorn, a soda, and some candy going into the theater, I can't imagine what a drink will be like. It's probably like when I went to Banff with Bence and Dan, and we went and we had at the Ice Castle, we decided to have a Bailey's and hot chocolate, and that basically ran us about $13 strong. So I can't imagine in a theater how much a beer is going to cost. It'll probably cost more than the Dome, and everybody knows that the heroin beer at the Saddle Dome is expensive and not very good. Here's a question for you, JD. What was worse, the SW prequels or Indiana Jones 4, the Star Wars prequels? I don't actually mind. I mean, Indiana Jones 4 was terrible, but I can get behind that. I don't know. It's just they're all terrible movies, but for whatever, I like Indiana Jones a little bit better in that department. The prequels were absolutely awful. Mum's Universe, I had 2 of those types of movie theaters when I used to live. It made movies an experience again, so much fun. One even had the chairs that moved, had water and wind effects as well. So much fun. That's kind of cool. Like speaking of the original, sort of Star Wars theater thing, I was living in the UK at the time. We went, we had a new theater and they just got Dolby surround sound, and it was all centered around the release of Star Wars. So I'd been to that movie theater tons and tons of times before, and seen movies, and the sound was good, and the theater's thing, and you get kind of the weird drive-in intermission popcorns, the hot dog doing black flips into the buns. Like, I'm probably really dating myself at this point because probably most of you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you Google it, you'll see it. So they would play all these kind of ads, get your refreshments and so on and so forth. So they added this Dolby surround sound. They played the intro, sort of, get your snacks and refreshments, because they didn't have, sort of the advertising for, commercials that they do now. And they were playing that, and it was just on, the regular thing. And then Star Wars came on, and, the music and, sort of that first opening scene where, Vader moves in and the lasers and the blasts, and they were coming from the front and behind. It was just blown away, and being in an age and never experiencing that before for the first time, your jaw just kind of drops. And like I said, it makes that impression on you because, number one, the film was so far ahead, but also the technology at that time, just kind of coincided with it. So it made it that experience. And again, it's that first time that you kind of experience that, it's good. It's like seeing your favorite rock band for the very, very first time, or your very first concert, being super excited and get blown away. Like, there's nothing that will really ever kind of match that for a lot of people, so there you go. There's a VIP theater in Seaton already. Is that the one that caught on fire? Is that the one? They've got table service and all that kind of stuff too, which is super awesome. The one by me doesn't have VIP service, but they definitely have the reclining seats, which I think is the greatest gift ever. It's like a giant lazy boy. The only thing I have to ever watch is that sometimes when I stop for too long and lay down and watch TV, I typically fall asleep, so I have to be careful of that. So there you go. It's open now. Yeah, caught caught on fire. So there you go. It's going to be, you know, interesting as things sort of evolve. I kind of embrace the fact that they might change in the VIP theaters. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I do like going out to the theater. I do like going out to the movies. I just know that for a lot of people it is cost restrictive now, and that when you're paying $8-9 a month for Netflix, where you can watch whatever kind of you want, and some great content in there, and especially since they're creating their own content in their own movies specifically for that, it creates an interesting challenge out there as well. So there you go. I go where would blah. Going back to the comments. Where are we? Indy 4 was so bad. It was bad, but like I said, if I had, like, it's like choosing, do you want to get shot or do you want to get stabbed? Like, both are gonna suck, but you're gonna probably choose one, and it's still gonna be bad, and it's still gonna hurt you, kind of thing. The next VIP Cineplex will be near Market Mall and the UFC. That is really, really interesting because a lot of the theaters over the years have shut down. So, I used to go to a lot of theaters here that don't exist anymore. The one at Southland Crossing. I used to go to the one at Market Mall that used to exist there, that since disappeared. There was one at Northland that I used to go to all the time. So, I mean, all these theaters kind of disappeared, as, movies kind of had a little bit of a slowdown. It is interesting, how Cineplex especially has responded to these kind of things in creating an experience, and definitely having more of things to do, adding the arcades to it. If you go to the one in Cross Iron Mills, there's a lot more entertainment around it, a lot more food orientated, better food choices. They're definitely trying to build those things up. So I mean, as they sort of plop these new ones in, I think it'll do really, really well. And you'll see, again, some of these smaller theaters potentially die off as well. But that being said, I do like going to the Globe. I kind of miss it. I used to love going prior to it being converted to Flame Central, and now back to the Palace. I used to love going to the Palace Theater. I saw films there that I have fond memories of, and the floor used to be so slick with popcorn butter, and it was gross and disgusting, but I loved the place because it was just that old theater feel. In fact, the last time I went there, even though there was no smoking around, they still had the ashtrays in the seats in between the backs of the seats. They had the little ashtrays there with the little things so you could put your cigarette down. So, times have changed. Can't smoke on airplanes. You can't smoke in the theater. That's just kind of how it is these days. So there you go. Back to the thing, the biggest cinematics letdown of my life. There was no movie after The Last Crusade. That is a fair enough comment. I'll go with that. Just a well-funded fan film. I'm premiering my vlog at 8:30. That is awesome. We will definitely tune in for that. It's a trilogy. Yep, complete trilogy. Didn't need the addition to it. I'm just curious what you guys think if they would bring back Indiana Jones. Would you be excited about that? An older Jones, or basically, would you be excited if they went out and cast somebody other than Harrison Ford and threw him in there and had, some younger Indiana Jones tales, or build off the end of it, just not being Harrison Ford as the lead? I'm curious what people think about that. I saw The Matrix at Southland Cineplex. That is cool. I hope to God they never try to reboot. He said that'll never happen, but you never know. Back to the Future. You do never know. It's, sometimes money talks, and sometimes it depends on who owns the rights. So you never know at the end of the day. I used to really like Mr. Chang's House of Pink. All the dirty movies you could watch for 25 cents for 30 minutes. The floor was sticky there too. A lot of those places don't exist anymore. I don't think Calgary had a big hot. I know when I lived in Vancouver, there was a ton of them, a ton of places, and I think it's still a few do exist down there. It's, you know, kind of in the seedy part of town, and you kind of laugh when you go by, but who knows? Who knows what's going on? They're making a fifth fourth. There you go. I personally believe Chris Pratt could play Indy, maybe like a MIB3 type story character, some sort of time traveling relic that isn't far tech. Fair enough. The House of Pink. There you go. They are making a new Indy movie. So there you go. You know, some things to look forward to. If you do have any other more questions or comments, by all means, throw them in the chat. You know, really good discussion today, guys. I didn't know it was going to kind of go this route, and I'm glad that it did. It's always good to talk with you guys. It's always, you know, nice you guys take your time out to sort of sit down and chit chat. So if you have any questions, do throw them in the chat there. In the meantime, I am going to click the play ad button, which never works. And if you get an ad, let me know. And if you don't get an ad, let me know. But I'm going to keep on streaming because A, it tells me to do that, and B, it never plays an ad, so it doesn't really matter anyways. Let's get to 101's like for 10 people watching. I mean, 10. There you go. Absolutely, if you could throw down a like, that would be greatly great. Ad rolling now. Holy smokes. How is that? There we go. We have, for the first time in the history of this stream, had an advertisement shown essentially in the middle of the stream. I guess Nick got an ad. He must have hit the algorithm at the exact right point or something along those lines. So I guess it isn't just a fake thing. So there you go. So Nick saw an ad. I don't know if anybody else did. Like I said, if you can hit that like button. And I greatly appreciate all the support that you guys throw my way. Obviously, this week is entertaining. It's funny, I got a call from Lloyd just before I went live. We were kind of chuckling about the hater. I have one magical hater kicking around right now who hates absolutely everything. I won't be surprised if this video is actually disliked, but it's definitely been an entertaining first month of the year for myself. I am looking forward to things. For those of you that have watched some of the earlier streams, the Calgary basically E-Games League, they launched their first event on Tuesday. Did really, really well. I did not go because typically I train that night. They had over 350 people there. So I would say it is a pretty big success as far as they are concerned for e-gaming. So this is the first kind of e-gaming league of its sort in Calgary. They're trying to bring the sport to Calgary. So those guys got it rolling. They were playing everything from Overwatch to I'm not sure what else they played because honestly, esports not necessarily my thing. Saw it on the news. It did really, really well. So congratulations to those guys. Craftsmith Filmwork. Did you end up going down? Because I know you had mentioned at one point that you were heading down. I'm just curious, you know, how it was, if you attended, and you know what it was like. But you know, a good job by those guys. They held it at Telespark, a decent venue, probably a really good venue for something like that because it's, you know, very science centery, and basically a giant LAN party. And as far as I went, you know, it really, really good. Is Dirt Pig back? It might be Dirt Pig. I haven't heard that name in a while. Dirt Pig, definitely one of my big fans. Loves me very, very much. Yeah, you know, you could be right. He goes out of his way to be Dirt Pig. So there you go. And as the name entails, you know, it's stuff. My dog is going crazy, so I think somebody must be either hanging outside or whatever's going on. So Bear the Destroyer in the podcast, as is tradition. More a tradition for Lloyd and JD because she's just that way. Let me go. No ad here. Left out again. Is this the same one as always or a new one? I'm not sure what that's in regards to. No ad on my end. Laugh out loud. It was at the eSport. Okay, you were at the eSport event editing my video right now. How was it? Just kind of curious how it was. Like, you know, things like that are always interesting to me. You know, how they sort of lay things out and, it's good. Like I said, it was good to see that they had 350 people. I thought it was kind of a weird choice to have it on a Tuesday night, especially considering it's a school day, that a lot of people that I think that would be interested in that, from my perspective, would be in the age category of maybe 12 to 25 would be your sort of biggest group. But again, it's just good that, successful, and obviously, things will go on going. Editing my video right now. That's cool. Shine up your band hammer and just get rid of them. It's one of those things. When I talk about haters, I don't believe in banning them. I kind of like trolling them back, and that's probably bad of me as a human being, but that's kind of what I like to do. And the way I look at it is, every time they come back to comment and so on and so forth, they're just creating interaction on the channel, and that's just helping boost the thing. And I mean, if they're being a complete idiot, I mean, it's very transparent for everybody. Lots of Bears the Destroyer, as she still goes on, was probably done on a Tuesday due to the venue only being allowed off-peak time. And that's fair enough. Like, from a business perspective, you're probably absolutely right there, Scott, that it's probably a lot more affordable and available to them on an off-peak time. Again, it would just be nice, for them to hit their demographic and sort of go forward. But I know they've already announced that they've got a second and a third, I believe. So, it'll continue to go into the future. So that will be awesome. Thanks for the Bear the Destroyer in there. Mom's Universe, thank you so much. Samurai Fingers is out of here. Thanks for dropping in, Nick. Appreciate it as always. And again, you will see myself and Nick sometime soon, as we've been working on a new podcast that shall be coming out in the future, hopefully soon. So again, I'm in almost jammering for an hour. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. It was nice to hit double digits today. For that, I am deeply thankful for. I will see you guys all next week. If there is anything that you want to discuss or talk about in the weeks to come, by all means, hit me up on my social media platforms at Paint Inc. I am there all the time. I am super easy to get a hold of. And until next time, see ya.